Hello and welcome to our Fitness Doctor audience, and a big warm hug, especially to our VIPs as we get into this new year. And what better way to start the new year than to optimize your mind and your mind around your body and all those things that you do on a daily basis to live the very best life possible and basically feel ageless. Well, today I have someone very, very special joining me, a wonderful friend of mine named Natalie Jill. She is an absolute elite expert and an amazing human as well. Let me share with you some of the things that Natalie has as accolades so that you already know me, but you don't yet know Natalie possibly. Maybe you do because she's pretty famous. But before you get into content for this episode with us, I want to make sure you know who she is, what she's about, so that you know why it matters and why you should listen. Natalie is a licensed master sports nutritionist. She has 3 million followers online. She has a top ranked podcast. She's a best selling author, including 2 books that are in stores, one of which is Aging in Reverse. And she also has the 7-Day Jumpstart, as well as other books. She's on 14 magazine covers in her late 40s and now into her 50s. Natalie's currently 53 and she still has abs. She's been on all of the main network talk shows, including shows such as The Doctors, Home and Family, ABC's Sonoran Living, Dr. Drew, and Hallmark's Home and Family. Now, when you first meet and see Natalie and you hear some of these things, you might think she's another one of those brunette expert bombshells and is just genetically blessed. Well, the reality is Natalie's story and who she is as a person goes so much deeper than that. She's faced the trials and difficulties so many of us have as we age. She has lots of past injuries, including a ruptured disc and distal bicep tear that she overcame. She has a mess of family genetics. Her dad, unfortunately, died at the young age of 49 from heart disease, and her mom has type 2 diabetes. She herself has celiac disease. She has helped over 250,000 people overcome these things and so much more. She's especially an expert on how to help you lose the most amount of fat this year, which is why I'm bringing her here with me today for us to collaboratively share so much wisdom, value, and really help shape this upstairs to make this year the very best it can possibly be. Now, without further ado, please help me welcome my good friend, Natalie Jill. Hi, Natalie.
Thank you so much. Quite the intro there. You're going to give me a big head with that intro, but thank you.
Well, you deserve it, and you're an absolutely wonderful person. Otherwise, of course, I wouldn't have you here with me, and it's been so awesome to know you and your husband Brooks, who I also am quite fond of. He's an incredible man. So it's absolutely a joy and a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
So for our audience, here's what we're going to do. We are going to go through the most important area when it comes to you having the best health, the best fitness, the best, you name it, in the mind, body, even somewhat spiritual realm. When it comes to your fitness and your health, we're going to give you the most valuable stuff. And there's nobody better than I can think of to share this message with me than Natalie Jill. So if you think about all the things that you do in terms of nutrition and fitness and exercise and hormones and like you fill in the blanks, none of that matters until there's one area that
Hmm.
really needs to be optimized first. And that's
Yep.
why, for example, this coming year, we're developing some of the best systems on mind, energy, emotions, empowerment. And Natalie is one of the most respected experts in these areas. So, regardless of how wonderful your plan is, if you don't follow it, it's not very good, right? So, the
Hmm.
number one thing that really drives your overall health is your mind, your energy, your emotions. So, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to structure this into 3 different parts. One is state, one is plate, and the other one is weight. So, state is your state of mind, your state of being,
Hmm.
your state of energy, and your thoughts lead to
Hmm.
emotions and the way you attach that. And those emotions then drive behaviors. So if we can help optimize this circle,
Yep.
you're going to have an even better year. Now, whether you are currently wanting to become fit and you're more in the couch potato state, or you're super fit like Natalie, there's always levels that you can continue to optimize. So no matter who you are, man or woman, and regardless of where you're at in that fitness spectrum, we're going to help you. So, Natalie, will
Yes.
you share with us what do you think is the biggest areas you've seen when it comes to state?
Yeah.
Share that with
So when it comes to health and optimization and weight loss, and I actually say fat loss or versus weight loss, because we don't want to just lose weight, we want to lose that excess fat and we want to release it so it's not coming back. The biggest area I find people are lacking, it's not necessarily the nutrition knowledge or the workout knowledge. It's this part, which is the most important part first. And that is your belief set around possibility for you. And let me explain what I mean by that, because this is not a just change your mind and be positive talk. When I ask people what they want to achieve and what they've done to achieve it, what I typically hear is I've tried everything. Things don't work for me the same. I'm getting older. I have these genetics. I have these issues. I have this list of things. They give me the resume of things they've tried and what's not working and why things are different now. And what I want to interrupt that thought process with is what do you believe is actually possible for yourself? Because if you believe that something is not possible and you're trying to take actions to change your body, nothing's going to change. So, for example, even if they go into you to your community, Robbie, and they say, "I'm have injuries, things are hurting, my body needs to change," and they don't believe it's possible to change, it's going to be a lot more challenging to go through your method and your program and have change if they don't believe it's possible. So one of the first things when they've said yes to you is they believe it's possible. Well, the same thing is with age optimization and with fat loss is we have to believe it's possible first. So one of the strongest things, and I'm going to ask those of you listening, is have you actually decided that you want a better version of yourself? Have you decided that this is your year that it's going to happen? Have you decided that you are done with the things you've tried, the things you've believed, the diagnoses you've had? Have you decided that this year is going to be different and you are going to change your body? Now, when I ask that, what typically pops up is most people don't go, heck yeah, I've decided. Most people say, well, I have decided, but. And when you do that, I have decided, but you actually have not decided. And I'm just going to start with just giving you an example here of one of my one of my first clients, actually. This was Jim Walters. And I know you're 80% women in here. I'm going to talk a lot about women, but I want to start with Jim here because when I met Jim, this was him, and he had decided the wrong thing. He had decided that this was his genetics and this is what he was doomed for. And he decided that he could try to tweak his diet again. He could try to tweak his workouts, but he had sort of decided that this is what aging means. And so this was him. So he would do little tweaks, but this is who he was. When I started working with him, and he said, hey, Natalie, give me the new diet, give me the workout, give me all the things. I said, well, Jim, before we can do that, let's talk about your actual decision. What do you want for yourself? And he said, well, I want to be so fit. I want to be so fit, so strong that people no longer think this is my genetics. They think being fit is my genetics. And I said, okay, that's a great decision. So then we were able to take these different actions based on that. And I just want to show you Jim today. Like this is him now, which is a totally different version of him. But he could get into all the things we changed with diet and nutrition, and I'm happy to talk about some of that. But really the thing that started this was that actual decision. So when we start changing things by doing that piece first, when we can start believing something's possible, we start operating from possibility and potential versus problem and circumstance. That is that first step.
that is a really awesome, true example of what can happen for anybody, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting. I think a lot of people, one of the big issues is they think about fitness and
Mm-hmm.
they think about someone who's really fit and they feel like they feel separated from that.
Yes.
It feels like, and a lot of people who used to be really fit, and
Yeah.
I talked to hundreds of people that were like before COVID, and
Yeah.
now things are different, right? Because of everything, the way the world
Yeah.
affected all of us during COVID. But there's many others who are like they were really fit 20, 30, 40 years ago. And what happens is when they were younger, they did some high level of fitness. And so now
Yeah.
the only thing that's in their mind is to do some extreme level of fitness to be able to be that fit. So
That's
I'm going to
right.
share something that's really interesting that
Okay.
most people have never seen before because I talk so much about therapeutic and anti-aging fitness, and we happen to
Yeah.
be the world's leader in that. But once upon a time, this was Robbie Stahl.
Okay.
Once upon a time, you see this guy in the dark blue trunks, second from the left, with hair. Yes, once upon a time, I actually had hair. And so I'm not just the guy who's sharing with you like how to be therapeutic fitness. Yes, I was absolutely ripped and muscular, and those things are important. But the interesting thing is when you get to that level of fitness and physique, you learn some things that if you wouldn't do that otherwise. And so that's one of the things. And actually, Natalie herself was the female version of what I did there in bodybuilding in the first decade of my professional career. And the big thing that I want to share for everyone is this is actually researched. 4 to 5% of the population actually wants to embrace fitness in the level that you enjoy the burn and enjoy the pain, enjoy the fatigue. Yes, there are a few
Yeah.
percent that are like, but 95% do not. And by us pushing ourselves too far and feeling like we need to change ourselves to
Hmm.
be better, that makes it so difficult. So the biggest thing that I found is one, fitness and all things, nutrition, exercise, everything about it, health should be comfortable and it should
Hmm.
feel very aligned with you. So I would love for you, Natalie, to share with like how do we get someone's mind better aligned with
Yes.
living that life in a way that they don't feel that they have to reach so far and they don't
Yes.
have to be in that top 4 to 5%, but yet can get amazing
Totally.
results.
So whenever we compare to somebody else, including an old version of us, we put ourselves in a failure triangle because what happens is there's no way you're going to be your old version of yourself, like that's past, and there's no way we're going to ever be somebody else. So when we do that and we keep looking backwards or comparing, there's no wins in that because you're chasing something that's just not possible. Like you'll never be the version of you 20 years ago. You'll never be the version of you 10 years ago. You'll never be the other person that you're looking at on social media. So the first thing we have to recognize is we should not be competing with old versions of ourselves or somebody else. What we need to get better at with is our version of us today, right now. So who are we today and how can we get better from that? How can we get to another level for that? And just, you mentioned earlier that I had a lot of injuries. I just want to show you this at the peak of my fitness career. In my late 40s when I was like really I was on a bunch of fitness covers and all these things. And I didn't understand at the time injuries and being over 50 and hormones. I didn't understand all of this yet. And I used to make a lot of videos like doing all these extreme pull-ups and chin-ups. And like that's how people first found me on social media. I would do all these like crazy little tricks and calisthenic kind of workouts. And that's who I was and who I thought I'd always be. And then I had a bunch of injuries like this one. Your bicep's not supposed to be up here. This was my distal bicep tear and my bicep literally ripped off the bone. And I didn't know that. And when you do that, that happens. You're supposed to get it repaired within 2 weeks. Well, we were traveling. We didn't really know I had torn it. Um, it was painful, but I didn't put it together. That's what had happened. So it was 3 weeks before I got back to the States. And when I went into the surgeon, I found myself in surgery the next day. And they said, I don't even know if we can repair this. And when they repaired it, I lost my supination. So they have to cut your tendon. And so my hand does not turn all the way like it used to. So I used to do all these tricks like chin ups, pull ups, all these things. And I had to retrain myself because I can't do that anymore because my hand doesn't turn to learn how to do a regular pull up, like where you're this kind of grip. And this was a big problem in my mind because I kept comparing to like who I was and what I had lost. And it wasn't until I was able to shift that and say, okay, that's a different version of me, but where am I right now? I can't even use my grip strength. I have nothing here. Let me focus on a goal of just getting better from here. That changed everything. And that's how the progress changed. Now, that might be an extreme example. Those of you listening, maybe you're so far from that, you have no interest in doing a pull up or a chin up. Maybe that's not your goal, but I'm going to ask you to look at something different. Like if you're looking at your lab numbers creeping up and you're like, well, gosh, my blood work is not like it used to be. Why is my blood sugar more sensitive? Or why am I getting this midlife thickening? This happens with a lot of women. We get this midlife thickening. And you're in this comparison of, well, 10 years ago, I didn't have this, or my friend doesn't have this. What I'm going to invite you to do is shift out of that thought and say, okay, but my starting point right now, here today, how can I work on my improvement from right here? Because that's a lot more rewarding and that's 1,000% possible. And that is that possibility where if we keep comparing to a past, nothing's going to change.
That is so powerful. I totally agree. How do you think about, because one of the things that I've found to be really
Hmm.
powerful is and actually Dan Sullivan, one of the best
Hmm.
entrepreneurial coaches in the world that
Yep.
coaches high achievers, he talks about a gap and a gain. So the gap
Yeah.
is like we always set this horizon. Like we really coach our VIPs through this. Many of them Like they'll make massive progress, but they're
Mhm.
not able to see or measure, understanding really like how they're making the
Yeah.
change, because they might be really unfit and have a lot of issues when they start. And so it's so important to measure
Mhm.
progress backwards. So we look to what we want to achieve, but we look backwards to measure
Yes,
the results. Because if you always keep looking at the horizon, you're never going to be happy with the result. And so you're staying
totally.
in a state of lack, a state of
Yes.
not good enough. But if you look back, like our VIP, look, oh wow, like you were having trouble doing one or two
Hmm.
squats before with full depth without your knee. Now you're doing 10, 15, 20 squats. Now you're
Yes.
able to go to the grocery store and spend an hour or 2 hours on your feet. Now, whatever the individual's case might be. So how do you look at that in terms
Yeah,
of
I love what you just said there, and this is an important distinction. So yes, you want to look back, but not back before starting dates. So for example, they come to you, they're in here now, and they're saying, I can't do today. What can I not do today? Not what was 10 years ago. What is right now today my starting point? Now you're measuring forward towards that horizon and you're comparing around that. What I'm referring to when I say we don't want to compare to other people or the back is that is past. We can't change these decisions we made in the past. We can't change the injury. We can't change the day we were born. We can't change the decisions we made that we didn't like. We can only decide right now from right here today that we want a different version of ourselves from this day forward. So I'm absolutely a fan of tracking and measuring, of course. But we're not comparing to my friend down the street, the girl on social media, the person I just saw on TV, or me 10 years ago, because that is just going to hurt you and not do anything. And this is a very big problem, especially with midlife women, because our bodies do change and we can get into why they do and what we can actually do about it. But if we keep comparing our 50-year-old body to a 30-year-old body, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. Now, could you be a lot stronger now, then you like, can we set it into motion? So 8 weeks from now, a year from now, you are a way stronger, leaner, toned, healthier version of you. Absolutely. But can I make you 30 again? No.
that is so powerful and it's so true. That's exactly what people do is they like you be the best version of yourself. And that's the same thing I found in fitness is most people's goals, for example, are on body composition or performance.
Mm-hmm.
How much, how fast, how much
Yes.
can I do? And this a lot of times has ego attached. And what I've found
Yes.
is our best results, regardless of the area of life, really comes down to love, care, and connection. And that starts with yourself. And when you
Mm-hmm.
feel that in self, you can spread that to others. And when you're holding that kind of energy, your body, your mind, everything gets so much more healthy. So I would strongly encourage anyone who's doing that. And I think it's kind of part of human nature. And I think it's even more it's so prevalent in the
Mm-hmm.
US versus some other countries. For example, I have a Brazilian wife, and in Brazil, comparison with others and the competition is so much less. In the US, this is a really strong element of the
Yes.
culture, I feel. So yeah, stop comparing with other people, love and embrace yourself so that you
Mm-hmm.
can take yourself forward. So when it comes to that, Natalie, what do you feel like are the biggest for let's talk about women, then we can talk about
Yeah.
men next.
Yep.
What do you think like are the biggest midlife challenges,
Yes.
in menopause, even post-menopause challenges for
Yes.
women, and how can they approach that from mind and maybe even plate?
So there's a lot of very real challenges, and we have to surround ourselves with a different belief set. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So there's a few things that are very real in midlife there that are true. So for example, when you hear something like metabolism slows down in midlife, yes, and but let me explain that. Yes, it will slow down if we're not doing anything to stay on top of it. Because what happens if we are doing the same workout we did years ago and we're eating exactly how we did years ago, we're probably going to start losing muscle. And when you lose muscle, you're going to burn less calories at rest. And when you burn less calories at rest, your metabolism is different, right? So we all understand that. So if we're losing muscle and we're not gaining muscle, we're going to change our body composition and we're also going to change our metabolism. So if you are continuing to keep muscle, that's not going to happen. However, most people, because of injuries, because of diagnosis, because of schedule, because of whatever, or belief, we stop challenging ourselves in our workouts and we are maybe not even eating enough protein. So what happens is we do slow that down. However, that is something I call fat. False assumed truth. When we have a false assumed truth, that means it might be factual right now, but it's not really the fact that has to stick. So, yes, maybe you're losing muscle. Yes, maybe your metabolism is slowed down. However, it's a false assumed truth. It's a belief set that we have to change because if we start countering that by eating the proper amount of protein and doing resistance training and adding muscle, then we basically kill that problem. That problem's gone. We stop that. And when we don't lose muscle, we don't slow down our metabolism. We don't change our body composition too much, and we don't lose bone. So a lot of things that are happening because we're losing muscle loss. So when we hear a general statement like my metabolism slows down, we have to look at why. So it's not just the number of your aging, it's those other things. Same thing when you say, well, gosh, my midsection is getting thick. Why is that happening, especially in women? Well, we're having a change in our hormones. So our estrogen levels are changing, our testosterone is dipping, our progesterone is dipping, everything is changing there, right? So when we have this change in hormones, our body starts distributing fat in areas. However, that's also a false assumed truth because there's a lot of things we can do. One, we can optimize hormones. So whether you believe in that or not, we could add in bioidentical hormones and optimize hormones with which shifts that. There's a lot of things we can do changing how we eat. We can clean up our gut health so our hormones go through a process differently. There's a lot of things that we can do, and there's things we can supplement with. So there's things that we can do to change that. I can tell you, and I'm 53 years old and I'm menopausal. So I'm in menopause. I don't have the midlife thickening. Now, I was starting to get it. I have plenty of pictures to show you. But I had to change this belief set. I was in this belief that, oh, it's just my hormones. It's just my hormones. But no, it wasn't just my hormones. It was my gut health. It was being a health detective and figuring this out. And once I was able to figure this out, eliminate toxins, all that, that shrunk back down. So I don't have that issue anymore. So when we have these beliefs around aging, I'm just going to challenge you and say, if your friends, if your family, if your doctor is saying, you're right, that sucks, it's just getting old, are you believing that? Because if you decide that's your truth, that's where you're going to stay stuck. But if you say, that doesn't sit right with me. I'm not going to, I choose to not take that information, then I'm going to let you know it's absolutely possible to break through that.
I love that. Don't take that information.
Hmm.
Don't just take the information that that's what's happening and that's what life's going to be. That's
Yeah.
those that are probably the most helpless is those who want to hold on to their problems as much and they want to
That's
talk
right.
about and
Mhm.
connect emotion with, and everything is all about those issues. And unfortunately, I speak with a lot of people
Yeah.
who want to hold that, and I know you do too. And that's really, I would say that's the number one thing that
Yeah.
makes the difference between, like, in our VIP family, those who they can have all kinds of problems. And with the
Mhm.
systems that we use, they can come out the other side just absolutely
Yep.
phenomenal. But the one thing that will hold them up is mind, energy, emotions, and
Yes.
how they want to. Do you want to hold on to problems, or do you want to start holding on and thinking about what you can do? What there's the steps that you can take?
Yes.
You mentioned gut, and I
Yes.
find that really powerful. I would love to know, like, what are
Yeah.
so one thing that I like to think of when I coach people is I think of it as
Mhm.
like dominoes. What is the dominoes that if you knock down one domino,
Totally.
knocks down many other
Yes.
dominoes? And before we get into gut, as a human, you have about 17,000
Hmm.
genes. You have about 17,000 genes.
Hmm.
Well, in your gut, in your microbiome, the amount of genes, and throughout your body, you also have other
Hmm.
microbials, other microscopic bugs and different things that live in your body. How weird that might sound. They actually have 170,000 genes. So
That's
you
right.
have 10 times more genes in your microbials than you do your own
Wow.
human genes. And so these microbials are actually affecting and sending triggers and signals
Hmm.
of how to think, how to feel, how to function. And I know you're an expert in this area as well. And you've really
Yeah.
helped a lot of, especially women and men, improve that. So, what are those dominoes
Yeah.
in gut that if you knock down one, you're going
Okay.
to get lots of results?
So I'm going to back up a minute and then I'm going to tell you a story. So if we were to walk by a really dirty body of water, so just picture if you're listening, you're walking by, you're on a walk and you see this really mucky, dirty body of water. It's a pond or whatever. It's dirty. It's got algae. It's got trash. It's gross. It's like not attractive water. And if we're walking by and we throw another piece of trash in it, we don't know what made this pond ugly. It's like there's just trash in there. We don't understand. So we could start removing trash, but it's going to be a long time before this water body is clear. Okay, you following me here? Now, if we walk by a different body of water and it's pristine and beautiful and it's like this crystal blue and it's perfect and there's no trash or algae, it's just gorgeous. It's lined with flowers and great landscaping. And we're walking by that body of water and we throw one piece of trash in there. We know exactly what's making the eyesore. We know exactly what's making the problem. When it comes to our bodies in midlife, we've had years and years and years and years of compounding things, toxins, bad choices, just all these things piled up inside. So when we hit midlife and we have this explosion of like, what the heck happened to my body? What's going on? Why do I have pain? Why do I have fat? Why do I have sagging skin? Why do I have this? What is going on here? There's so much going on. It's hard to figure out what that one thing is. So women, especially, they'll go to the doctor. The doctor says, you're in menopause, you're aging, just accept it. Or here's synthetic birth control. It's kind of like the answer. Or here's an antidepressant. Some of us have heard that. So that is not fixing the actual problem. We're not getting to the root. What I like to teach people is to be a health detective. So we have to start in layers. And layer one is changing your belief set. So number one, you got to believe it's possible to change. Number one, we kind of covered that earlier. Two, we have to clean up our nutrition. Now, you might think you're eating clean unless you are eating primarily an unprocessed natural real food diet. So foods that once grew, and we're eating the right macronutrients of that, then we are not eating a proper clean food diet. So just eating fat-free, sugar-free is not eating clean. I grew up in the 70s too, so I know that's what we were taught, 70s and 80s, fat-free. That's not it. When we eat a primarily unprocessed natural food diet, we're getting our body to state. So first and foremost, are we doing these things? So are we changing our mindset and are we eating that way? Once we've done that and we dial that part in, this is what I teach in my method. So we dial that in. Now we got to look at the other variables. So we have to look at what else is happening, what else is going on. And before we can really dive into hormones, I got to look at what's going on with gut health. Because if our gut is messed up, if we have leaky gut, if we have issues there, then we are not, number one, we're not breaking down our food properly. We're not getting all the protein we're actually eating. Your body is not thriving and using all its nutrients. Sometimes other things in our body are using these nutrients and hijacking it. So we think we're eating healthy, well, doing all the things, taking supplements. And we're like, but why am I foggy headed? Why am I gaining weight? What's going on with my blood serum? Like, what's going on here? There's something going on in our gut biome that is challenging this. So then we have to look at how do we clean this up? Once we've done that and looked at that, now we're ready to start optimizing hormones and looking at your thyroid. There's a sequence of these things. And when we just go to one of them without looking at the whole thing, we're not fixing the problem here. So I'm going to tell you a real story about me for a minute. Some of you will resonate, some won't, but hopefully you'll take a piece from this. So here I am, this fitness, fat loss, nutrition expert, top of my game, helping women for years and years and years. And when I was 51, so 2 years ago, I myself had gained 20 pounds. Now, to you, you would not have thought I was overweight. I still looked fit. I still could kind of see the abs. I was still strong. I was still working out. I started feeling really disconnected and fake. And the reason I did is I thought, this is weird. I never believed this would happen to me, but I started having this belief set that a lot of you have. Like, what's going on with my midsection? Why am I tired? Why am I forgetting things? Like, what's happening? And I started believing maybe this is real. Maybe we just get older and things suck and I just need to accept it. And I, just like many of you, went to my doctors who said, everything's fine. You're just getting old. You know, this is menopause. This is perimenopause at the time. This is it. And I started hormone replacement, kind of guessing at it, and nothing was changing. So I then started learning about gut because I was already doing the nutrition. I was doing the workouts. I was doing the belief set. But I started to block my belief set, thinking maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just what happens when we age. Some of you believe that. You're like, you're wrong, Natalie. This is what happens as we age. So I started learning a lot about gut. And I thought, well, how would I have leaky gut? How would I have any of this? This doesn't make sense. And I happened to hear a lot about gut. So what got my attention is I started having a blood sugar dysregulation. Some of you wear CGMs, you know what I'm talking about, or you see a A1C on your blood work that's a little high. But this really got my attention because my mom is type 2 diabetic. We have dementia and Alzheimer's in our family. So this higher blood sugar was really scaring me. So much so that I just started getting really strict on my diet, like many of you would do. I'm like, I'm just going to get really strict on my diet. I'm going to like cut out all carbs. I was like, I'm going to control this. Well, my blood sugar wasn't changing. So a friend of mine in the gut health world mentioned parasites to me. And I thought she was crazy. I'm like, parasites? What are you talking about? Like, that's if you're in a undeveloped country or you eat like raw. Like, I just was like, what are you even talking about? I thought she was crazy. But she kept saying, well, if you have parasites, like it could create blood sugar dysregulation. It could affect your gut health, this whole thing. I thought she was crazy. But I entertained her and did this gut test thing, which I did this gut test. And as it turned out, I actually had a parasite, which was like mind boggling to me. So I did this whole thing to clean up the parasite. And she said, that's not enough. Something's feeding it. If we have leaky gut or anything in our gut, something's feeding it, meaning toxins, something else is coming in, which led me down a whole spiral of like, what could that be? Is it my makeup? And it turned out I had a ruptured breast implant. I had breast implants in, and I did for 30 years. I had different sets over 30 years. I put them in when I was 19 years old. Not my finest moment, but I had them. So learned I had a ruptured breast implant. which, that made sense. When you have that, when you have something invading your body, it's feeding a whole chain. Now I had your gut basically works to help clean that up. That's where it tracks parasites, things like that. And without going too far off a tangent here, if Robbie and I were to eat the same exact organic salad, but he's got a healthy gut biome and I don't, his body's going to process out any critters that are in that salad. But if you have toxins in your body and you have an environment that will attract them, your body will attract that and that will stay there. So for me, becoming a health detective, learning that, cleaning up my gut, removing the implant, now I actually was in a better body state. So now I was truly able to optimize hormones and eat well and get back on track, and my body normalized. So I tell that whole story not so you just go run out and get a gut test, or not so you do an explant if you have implants. It's not just that simple. What I'm talking about here is a system of getting your body in an optimal state so you can start being a health detective to figure out what is that puzzle piece. And when we can figure out that puzzle piece, that's when everything changes with our results. I don't know if that was too much of a tangent, Robbie, but I wanted to tell that story because it really ties in how I work with people to figure out and be a health detective.
I love it. So much value there. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's I know that what you just shared is going to resonate with a lot of people. There's so many details, Natalie, of nutrition, like, carnivore or vegetarian, or, eat this and not that, or super carb restricted or ketogenic. There's so
Yeah.
many different options. But you have helped 250,000 people. So you yourself are a pretty good health detective because you've seen these transformations a lot. Share with me your thoughts on what is the best nutrition plan to get
Yes.
best results. And also, right, we have to have something that's doable. So can
Yes.
you combine all those
Yeah.
things?
Yeah, great question. So, first and foremost, I want to say there's not a one right answer for everybody. So, I'm saying that first because if you're listening and you're like, I love carnivore, it's changed my life. If that's working for you, I'm not going to stop you. Same thing. If you're like, I love keto or vegan or whatever it is that you love that's working for you, I'm not going to challenge you. I'm talking to you right now if what you're doing is not working. So, if what you're doing is not working, I want you to hear this. Number one, I hate deprivation dieting. So anytime we're like, we just have to count calories and eliminate food groups and we can't have this, and this, that sets us up for failure. Whatever we can't have or not supposed to have, we're going to start focusing on and craving. It's how our minds work. It's how our bodies work. So what I teach, especially women, is we're going to start focusing on addition. How can we add in so much of the good every day? So much of the good that we make less room for the not so amazing. And I call bad foods not so amazing foods because I don't believe anything's bad. So if you want that Reese's peanut butter cup or that glass of wine, more power to you, but we're going to do it in an order. So we're going to have the amazing foods first, the things that add nutritional value. We're going to add in so much of the good that you want less of the not so amazing. When we focus that way, we focus on addition and reward base, which is how I teach eating. We reward first with the right things, and then there's less room for those things. What I teach is not calorie counting. Now, I'm very aware how many calories I put into my plans and things, but we really set ourselves up for failure with calorie counting. And I'll tell you why. Number one, it's impossible to know how much you're actually consuming or burning. There's just no way. Nothing is truly accurate. So if you say, I burned X amount on the step mill, I would be really aware that that's probably not very accurate. There's too many variables, like how much fat do you have? How much muscle do you have? How is your personal metabolism? What's your DNA? There's too many variables. Two, that's just not very accurate. If I give you an apple and I say one small apple, well, how many calories is in that? I don't know. How big is it? How small is it? So most of us are grossly underestimating how much we're eating and we're overestimating how many we're burning. So that's the first thing. So when I put somebody on calorie counting, we're setting you up for failure there. That's not how that we do this. What I like to teach is what are the ideal foods we need to add in, and I base this on unprocessed, natural, real food. I am very big on protein. This is critical. This is what helps our appetite. It's what helps our hunger. It helps us avoid bone loss. It helps us maintain muscle. There's so many benefits to protein. So I'm a protein first person. I don't force it in you, but we focus on adding that in first. I'm also a huge believer of phytonutrients. When I talk to somebody who is carnivore and they love it, I'm concerned for them year after year after year. So you might love it now, but we need phytonutrients, we need antioxidants to age well. So if you want to be lean and live off of animal meat and organ meat, go for it. But I'm going to tell you, you are going to rapidly age. You are going to look a lot older. My counterparts in their 50s look a lot older than me when they're doing that. So I am a fan of adding plants in. I don't force people to eat plants, but I'm a fan of that, of phytonutrients. I'm also a fan of fats. We cannot avoid fats. Now, that being said, there are a few things that I think really have to come out of our lives, like really do. And I still don't even label them as bad. I just teach an awareness. So when people come into my Thrive method, or they work with me in my actual method and my programs, what I teach is education. So I don't just say you can't have these things. I teach you what happens when you have them. So let's take seed oils, for instance. Now, this is confusing for most of us in Gen X because we grew up learning that vegetable oils are amazing for us. We have to avoid saturated fat. And that's just not true. And we learned that this has changed. There's a whole host of problems that happen with vegetable oil. And if you're eating out most of the time, chances are you're getting a lot of vegetable oil. So I don't just say don't have vegetable oil. I teach why. I teach what's happening when we have vegetable oil. Why is this creating oxidative stress? Why is this changing our body's ability to get a cancer or heart disease? Why is this creating a skin cancer epidemic? Like, what is going on? So I teach it so you're equipped with information to make better choices. Same thing with high fructose corn syrup. Most of us know sugar's not ideal, but that doesn't mean completely avoid fruit. It means let's understand what happens when we have too much, too condensed versions of sugar. If you have high fructose corn syrup, I want people that work with me to understand how that's going to spike your insulin, how it's going to create glycation, what's going to actually happen. So now you make better choices. You see, knowledge is total power. Just telling, just because you watch a TikTok that says don't have this is not a reason to not have it. But when you can truly understand and learn, you make better choices there.
That is incredibly enriching. I would say the
Mhm.
best word to share exactly with what you just said is enriching. That's exactly. I couldn't agree with you more on everything you just said.
Mhm.
Amazingly aligned. And so you got 30 years of experience and tens of thousands of people, 250,000 people, and I 100% agree. So
Mhm.
with what Natalie just said, there's superpower in what you just
Mhm.
heard. So definitely want to apply that. Now, let's talk about something very near and relevant to so many of our audience members, and that is the pain cycle.
Mhm.
There's many different things you can do to address the pain cycle. Nutrition is incredibly important. Your mind, energy, emotions is really number one.
Mhm.
Nutrition, physicality, optimizing your body mechanics to get the best results, like
Mhm.
guaranteed results. You really want to address all of those areas. So, Natalie, what is your thoughts on
Yeah.
helping people get out of the pain cycle, which I
Yep.
know you've been in yourself
Many
before?
times.
So, what's been your experience on the nutrition side with
So
that?
let me start with, okay, do I even have this? This is my MRI from when I ruptured a disc. All that in a circle was supposed to be in between my disc and it ruptured out. So this happened. I was on set several years ago. I was doing a lot of workouts for 9 hours actually, and I was in show off mode. I was just doing a lot, going, no, this is fine. I'll be fine. And I had the most excruciating back pain I've ever felt in my life. And I had a disc that ruptured out so much so that it went down my spinal cord and it created something called foot drop. I know you're familiar with that, Robbie. So my whole right leg stopped working and I had a foot drop. So I was dragging my leg as I would walk. So once it ruptured out, my back stopped hurting, but now I couldn't use my leg all the way from my piriformis down to my foot. So I had to have an emergency surgery to remove that rupture. And my choices were do nothing. That was choice one. Choice two was fuse it. Choice three was add a disc replacement. And I chose nothing. I said, remove it. I'm going to fix this. And my surgeon was very clear with me that you're going to be literally bone on bone, like literally bone on bone. There's no disc there. You're going to have a lot of pain if you do not do a fusion or a disc replacement. And I said, bring it. So I did have a lot of pain and I didn't, just like many of you, want to work out. I didn't want to do things. I was like, oh my gosh, if I ruin my life here. But what I figured out being a health detective, because this is what I teach, is wait a minute, this was L5S1. If I can take that disc out of the equation, if I can build up my glutes, I already had a strong core, but if I can build up my glutes and that mid core, then I'm not going to really need L5S1. Like I'm going to just take it out of the equation. So this is being a health detective. So I really started hyper focusing on my glutes and correcting my glutes, which literally took the disc out of pain. And I do not have back pain anymore. Now, if I do not work out for a few weeks and I sit all day and I do all the things I'm not supposed to do, then yes, my back starts hurting again. But if I stay in motion doing those things, I stay out of the pain cycle. So, what is the pain cycle and where does that come from? Well, the pain cycle means we have an injury, something hurts, we have wear and tear. And because of that, we think we can't do things anymore. So, we stop moving. And when we stop moving, a bunch of things happen. So, well, a body that's not in motion will not be in motion. So number one, we are going to make our pain worse. Two, just by sitting around and not moving, we're going to create a higher rate of inflammation. So that higher rate of inflammation creates more pain, which makes us not want to move even more. When we're not moving even more, we're not likely to eat healing, healthy food because we feel like crap. So we're sitting on the couch and I'm like, I'm going to have pizza. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have that. So we stay in a pain cycle. So how do we break the pain cycle? Well, we have to get moving. So I know with Robbie, you and the fitness doctor, you really learn how to do that, but we have to get moving somehow, somewhere to start breaking that. But we also have to eat in a way that absolutely supports and reduces inflammation. So we have that awareness and want to move. So what does that look like? Well, I said earlier, I don't like elimination diets, and I don't. But if we have an understanding and we're very strategic on why we're removing something, it will make sense. So there's a few foods that absolutely cause and create more inflammation than necessary. And this might sound controversial to some of you. I'm not here to argue about it. I'm just going to share kind of fact on what makes inflammation. But dairy and grains, eating grains, and sugar all create more inflammation. So where Robbie might be able to go eat a big thing of oatmeal or brown rice or whatever and not have any issues, someone that has a lot of inflammation in their body, grains are not going to support them. It could create more inflammation. Dairy for most people will create an inflammation response. Sugar will always create an inflammation response. So what do? Do we never have dairy, grains, or sugar? No, that's not what I'm saying. But we start to focus on foods, and this is what I teach in my method. We start to focus on foods that drop that inflammation response and are actually healing us. So we start focusing on a diet that's full of unprocessed natural foods, the right proteins, the right carbs that help us. So example of a grain-free carb would be a sweet potato, would be vegetables, would be low glycemic fruits. Those are all amazing carbs that are not grain-based. And we avoid dairy for a time being to reduce that inflammation, and we avoid sugar for the time being. Now, I did talk earlier about not being in deprivation mode, so we do this slowly. We focus on that. But what I can tell you is when you learn these things might be linked to your pain, everything changes, because if you don't have those for a week and your pain level is way down, now you want to move. Now you want to do the exercises. Now you start reducing weight, the excess weight that's contributing to excess pain. So that's how we break the pain cycle.
Dairy, grains, and sugars. For
Mhm.
the extreme majority of people, there are some
Mhm.
more, I would say, even genetically gifted and athletic
Yeah.
people who are fit and have lower
My
body.
husband's one of them. He has
And
no
are,
issues. Yeah.
yeah, and your husband's a naturalist
Yes.
in many different ways. So he's eating good, healthy, natural foods,
Mhm.
and he's married to you. So the likelihood of inflammation is much lower. He's still, if we did some really detailed testing on his inflammation, we would
Mhm.
find that he's getting some spikes, but it's not past
Yes.
the threshold of where he's symptomatic. So you too, audience member, can change by eating the right foods and get much
Yes.
lower inflammation. And then eventually you can get away with, when you want to, limited periods of time, eating a dairy, a grain, or sugar for some people. And some people are
That's
so
right.
extreme they'll never get away with it.
That's
But
right.
the other thing that you need to consider is with the pain cycle. So we have acute pain and then we have long-term chronic pain. So what
Yes.
happens is we can have an area like Natalie injured her spine. So there's a biomechanical factor triggering pain to the brain to feel pain.
Totally.
And you only feel pain because your brain's sensory perception of it. So you're triggering a pain signal. And then you
Mhm.
got your diet that's creating inflammation or not treating your gut right. And so you start stacking all these things, and that's how you get into extreme pain. Well, you can unstack those pain
Yes.
things to reduce pain. And so then what happens is that acute pain, though, for many people, goes into the memory centers of your brain. So the
Mhm.
learning and memory centers goes into your limbic system, goes into your motor control
Mhm.
centers. But here's the thing. If you're unstacking and you're removing those issues with
Yep.
diet, with exercise, with gut health, then you start to not have the triggers, and then you can, and then with the right state of mind, energy, emotion, and thinking about the way you want to be, not the
Mhm.
problems that you do have, and holding yourself as though the results already happened, and you combine all those things, you'll erase, for simple terms, the long-term chronic pain. That's how you get out of long-term
That's
chronic pain.
exactly right. Yeah, I love that. And Robbie, like, so when this happens, it's not that I'm fixing the problems. Like my spine is not fixed, right? Like we look at MRI, you'll see that. To just give you an example, right now as we're recording this, for the last 2 weeks, I had a lot of travel, a lot of travel. My schedule was not normal. I was not walking daily. I was sitting a lot on airplanes, sitting a lot. I wasn't eating optimally, and I wasn't getting in my regular workouts, not to the level that I do. So, and I was wearing high heels, which is like one of the worst things for that kind of back situation. So I'm like literally traveling through the airport with these boots that had heels. So my back was hurting again a lot. So the first reaction is, what's wrong with my back again? What's happening? Should I take Advil? What's going on? But then it's an interruption. No, wait a minute. I have not done any of these things. Let me give it 2 days of getting back on track and the pain stopped. So that's how I want to teach people. It's not that your injury is not real, the pain's not real, but let's learn how to break the cycle. So it's not this endless trap of I'm just getting old. This sucks. And I'm broken.
That is an amazing jumping off point to, or jumping into point. So we talked about state, we talked about plate. And so state is mind, energy,
Mhm.
emotions. Plate is obviously nutrition.
Mhm.
Weights is like your weights, your resistance, your workouts, your cardio, your you name it, your
Mhm.
mobility, your stretching, all of that world of
Yes.
fitness. And so so now we'd like to share some superpower with you on the weight side. And so
Yeah.
as Natalie just shared in detail there, the one thing that I would say that everyone needs to do, sometimes you can get away with this stuff in your teens, especially 20s, 30s for most people.
Hmm.
A lot of people by the time they're in their 30s also starting not to get away with this. But the one thing you need to do is things that optimize your biomechanics or your body
Hmm.
mechanics, the things that align your mobility, your positioning, your alignment, your proper diaphragmatic breathing, tissue tightness where you might have restricted tissue, all these many details. And so what I like to say is, look, on the nutrition side, like Natalie shared, you don't have to have like fit into any box. Do what works for you because
Right.
you're going to eat multiple times per day if you're eating properly. So
Hmm.
nutrition doesn't have to necessarily be perfect, but because it actually takes more effort to make nutrition
Hmm.
perfect. On the exercise side, it really doesn't, like once you have the plan, which is what we provide,
Hmm.
once you have the plan, you don't need to have you're not going to spend any more effort by having perfect exercise. It's going to take
Right.
this amount of time, effort, energy to have perfect exercise. So the strategy is perfect exercise. But when I say perfect, that doesn't mean that you need to be uncomfortable or over push or
No.
deal with fatigue that you don't want any of that. Actually, exercise should be comfortable, but do things to optimize your body mechanics at least a few times per week. Now, once you've done that, here's the thing about fitness. And I would love to hear your thoughts as well, Natalie.
Hmm.
But the things about fitness is, and I'm going to share now, Natalie's so great at sharing stories. I'm going to share a story with you now. This coffee cup here, right? You can see
Hmm.
2 years of friendship, loyalty, love, fun, right? The coffee
Hmm.
cup that Patricia and I had painted. We have a store called As You Wish, and you go there and you paint things, and it's a really wonderful connecting time. And so we made that coffee cup. And when I think about that, I think about our relationship. I think about our second year of marriage and all the wonderful things that have happened since then. We're now almost in year 14. So that should be the same way you feel about your fitness. You should have a relationship with your fitness, not about what you need to do that you don't want to do, not about what you need to have that you don't already have, but what is in your being. So, for example, many of our VIPs enjoy dancing, and that would be a great activity. Maybe you enjoy rowing or biking or walking or hiking. Now, please continue filling in the list for you. And so the reality is, you might enjoy cleaning your house or playing with your dog or playing with your grandkids. The point is, develop a relationship so that you become fitness, not by doing or having, but feeling it and developing a relationship within you for what you want to do. And when you're doing the thing, get yourself into a flow state by fully focusing and thinking about all the positive emotions that you can in that activity. So if you're not already there, then what you should do is think about and make sure you're having a really positive connection with your physical activities. If you do that, you're going to increase neurotransmitters that drive behavior, affect emotion. You're going to want to do it a lot more. So my approach for you on the weight side is got to do some things to optimize your body mechanics because otherwise, especially beyond the age of 50, stuff's going to degenerate and fall apart. You're going to get misaligned. There's going to be issues if we don't address. But beyond that, just enjoy, just become fitness and absolutely love the process. Natalie, what's
Mm.
your thoughts?
I love that. So what I teach with that very much aligns with that. So number one, I say move daily. We got to move daily. So I think we're sitting entirely too much. I'm sitting as I'm interviewing with you right now. It's a one time a day I sit when I'm working, just if I'm doing an interview or a podcast. Other than that, I have a desk behind me, which is a stand-up desk. So when I'm working, I'm standing up. I also, anytime I take a phone call, I pace and I make sure I'm walking daily. So movement in general is one of the bigger problems that we're just not moving enough. We're sitting too much. So that's important. Two, exactly what you're doing with Fitness Doctor, with what you do with Robbie and the community there is corrective exercise, understanding how to get our body mobility, everything aligned and working functionally. That's critical. when we're actually doing a workout to change body composition, we will not change body composition unless you enter in two variables. One is progression and the other is intensity. And let me explain what I mean by that. Progression means you're not doing the same exact 3 sets of 12 that you were doing 15 years ago, because that's not progression. If we do the same exact thing over and over again, expect different results, we're not going to change. You have to progress in exercise. So just to give you an example, if I say go do a plank and some of you can hold a plank amazing for 2 minutes and some of you can't do it yet at all, unless you're at, an incline or something else, you would want to, if you're starting at that incline, you got to keep advancing that, going longer, going lower, advancing that as progression. If you can hold a 2-minute plank right now, doing a 2-minute plank every day is not progression. How can you get longer? How can you get stronger? How can you do that more? That's progression. Intensity doesn't mean go and become an Olympic athlete. Intensity means that you're being intense for you. So if I say, let's go do a pull up right now, or a pull up, maybe Robbie can knock out 20. Okay, great. That's his level. Maybe I can do 3. That's my level. And maybe you watching, you can't do 1 yet. So if you watching, you can't do 1 yet, but you go hang from a pull-up bar, that might be intense for you. If I can do 3 and I work on 4, that's intense for me. If Robbie can do 20 and he works on 25 or 30, that's intense for him. So it's whatever is intense for you, that is the challenge. So when I look at progression in workouts, we got to progress, we got to be intense. But more importantly, the most important part before any of that, with the physical movement, it's moving more, it's correcting things. So you've got that covered. And then rewinding what's your belief set and how are we actually eating and consuming, because that is going to play a big role right there.
I love it. Yes, progression is so important. The one thing I would couple with what you shared is progression is really important. So what we do with our VIPs is
Mhm.
we kind of say you have to work through dinner to get to dessert, and the progression is
Yeah.
really the dessert because that's where you start getting the
Yep.
fitness performance. But first, you should find comfort in what you're doing.
Hmm.
And Natalie shared you should then optimize your mechanics around and
Yes.
then progress. And
Yes.
there is a level, what I will share, and most people don't even need to concern about this, but it's really good, important for the
Hmm.
mind, is there will become a time if and
Yep.
not if, when you become very fit for you,
Yep.
that the strategy now is maintaining
Hmm.
the optimal fitness. So it's like progress to the point that yeah, that I'm fit enough. I can do everything and every way. If you want to hike the Grand Canyon, you're able to do that.
Yep.
If you want to play with the grandkids on the floor and run around in a bear crawl type of position, you can do that for a minute or two. Once you start to get there, I would strongly advise everyone, like more and more and more and more
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
is not necessarily better.
That
So
totally. So I was
yeah.
talking specifically about changing a problem or changing a body composition. So you're right. Once you're at that level, then you're good to maintain for sure.
But you would probably say that about nutrition, right? Like, hey, your nutrition's good.
Yes.
You're getting checkups from your doctor. All your blood work's good. You've drastically decreased your pain.
Hmm.
Don't turn it into an OCD issue because that actually can cause pain too with like work
Totally.
intentions. We're like, oh, I have to make it better. And oh, I have to do that little thing and that little thing. Like, no, no, calm, relax. Like, just see the
Yes,
results as you want them to be and do the thing that's working for you to get the kind of result you want.
absolutely. I totally align there.
So now let's do something, Natalie, for our wonderful audience members that elevates even more beyond the
Hmm.
awesomeness that you already enjoyed with us here. And how about we invite you to a really special program that
Hmm.
Natalie will host. Actually, I'll be the MC host, and Natalie will just absolutely drop one gold nugget after the next. And we're going to focus on fat loss as we age.
Yes.
So you're now invited, since you attended this segment with us, to Fat Loss as We Age. And Natalie is going to be a host, sharing all kinds of gold nuggets. So we'll put a
Yeah.
link for you to be able to register. So when you see this session, you'll have a link there for you to be able
Yep.
to see. Natalie, what
Amazing.
else? What else should
Yeah,
everyone?
no, this is great. So I have a method called Total Body Thrive, which I'll tell you more about later. But this is where you get to go deep with 8 weeks for me. However, I don't love anyone to go into that or commit to that until we do this session on fat loss as we age, because I want you to have a true taste of what it's like to coach with me. I want to go deeper on some of these topics we talked about. I'm going to share a very specific method on this class. And I've done this class many times with my own audience, but I'm doing this specifically with this audience, with you all. So you will be the only ones that are on. And I want to do that specifically with you because I also want to be there to answer all of your own questions. So if any of this resonated today, or when we go deep in this class, you're going to have a lot of aha moments. I want to be able to be there to coach you and answer your questions with that. So I'm really excited about this. You'll definitely want to block out about 90 minutes. We might not take that long, but I'd love for you to hold, 90 minutes and be really like present and come with your questions, because I want to really lean in, and then there'll be an opportunity for me to answer some of your questions live as well.
I love that. So not only are you going to have a session like this one, it's going to be truly live with
Mm-hmm.
Q&A. So you get to connect with Natalie, especially. I'll be there,
Yep.
but bring your questions. So everything that came up for you, I'm sure you have like a million questions after watching all of this with us. And bring your questions. We're going to literally have a live session with
So
Q&A
good.
included. And you're invited. You're our guest of honor. So click the link
Amazing.
on this page that enables you to register yourself in for that. And Natalie and I both super look forward to seeing you then.
Yep.
Lots of love, and it's been an absolute joy connecting with all of you, and of course, especially you, Natalie.